Alright everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Fat Phil, and today I want to speculate on what's coming in the next era. What characters can we expect? Now, this is pure speculation. I don't have anything other than, I would say, my opinion, which if you live in my area, that with $1 gets you 2 hot dogs at Sheetz. So it's really not, we're just spitballing here. I do have some points that I think make sense. I do have some logic in place of why I believe that this could happen. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. We should be getting an update probably tomorrow at the time of recording of what will be here. So I wanted to get this out in preparation for that. So let's get in here and let's speculate on the era. Now, I am going to preface this and say I do not know, and this is, I could be flat out wrong. So, getting started here, we're going to talk about the Acolyte. I do not think we're going to get Acolyte content, and I don't think it has to do with the popularity of that show. It has to do with the Stranger himself. The Stranger was released, and they specifically called out the team that he's intended for. Now, that doesn't mean that maybe they'll release other characters from that, series and put them into teams. But you released the biggest character from that show as the Conquest unit, and it's in a team that has nothing to do with that series. So it feels like the decision was kind of made that, all right, we're just gonna, this is it. And not that this hasn't happened before. You think about, Maul, he was going in the Lord Vader team, who they really didn't have any connection to each other, but it worked in the context of Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. This kind of feels like similar to that, but at the same time, Starkiller has needed another home, and they found the place for that. So I don't necessarily think Stranger is on deck right now. I feel like there's a lot of other, characters that would be making their way in. And remember, when they released characters like, think Jocasta, they released her before Jedi Master Mace Windu was in the game, but they told us that he was coming. Whereas with the Stranger, they didn't tell us that any of the other characters from the Acolyte are going to be coming in. So that's kind of why I believe that is just not going to happen, is because I think they would have kind of called out that we would be expecting that for the game. Now, what about Satele? Is there potential for an Old Republic era? So there's definitely some potential here. There are also some problems. So with Satele, the problem that I have with an Old Republic era is you could release 5 new Old Republic Jedi, but they'd have to be their own team because Satele's team feels very much called out already. Number one, it talks about Old Republic Jedi. Well, there's already 4 Old Republic Jedi in Revan, Bastila, Jolee, and Juhani. Now, the issue being that Juhani's Omicron is designed for unaligned Force users, the Starkiller Stranger team. But we got that big update, if you remember, with Mission, where her Omicron is literally calling out a Jedi leader that is Old Republic. And if Zalbar isn't in the team, the leader is considered Zalbar. So basically, she fills the spot in this team for territory war. So I feel like we're not going to get 5 new Jedi for the Old Republic that just create their own team, because I feel like you would have saved Satele for that. I could, again, we could be wrong and there could get other characters, but it just feels that way. Especially with the amount of call outs this kit has to certain things like marked and attacks out of turn, legendary battle meditation. It talks about that, where is it? That allies are like immune to revive. They gain revive immunity. So that calls out Jolee. Like, it just, there's a lot of these where I get the feeling that this is the team. These are the characters that are intended to go here. So I'm not sure that I quite buy Old Republic Jedi. Not that there aren't ones we couldn't necessarily get, but I don't want to say necessarily scraping the bottom of the barrel, because there's definitely some popular ones that we could, that could get, put in, but it would feel a bit disjointed because Satele is going here. Now, I have the Darth Malgus squad here. If you've never read the Deceived novel, or you've never seen the trailer for the Old Republic game called Deceived, where Malgus is attacking the Jedi Temple, there's a Twi'lek that is featured in both the book and the trailer. Her name is Alina Dura. She is actually Darth Malgus' lover. The reason I'm calling her out is because the Darth Malgus team, that 5th slot is always up for interpretation between Marauder, Assassin, and Sith Empire Trooper. Now, most of the time it ends up going to Marauder, but you've seen plenty of iterations. Adding someone like Alina, I think, would be a great way to solidify this team, maybe bring it, into 2026 with a bit more oomph. And the other side of that as well is the 3v3 split. It's always felt very strange splitting this team for 3v3 because you're kicking out Basilisk Fallen, or you're kicking out Revan, or you're kicking out somebody who's extremely important to the team. Adding in a character with that kind of synergy with Darth Malgus, where you could use Marauder and you don't feel like it's this massive step back, to then still be able to use Revan, Malak, and Basilisk together, I think would be a really, really good move for CG. So that would be a character that I think could fit really well with that kind of Sith Empire tag. Now, she would obviously break some of Malgus's unique abilities, so you'd have to be able to give her that, similar to with Mission, hey, she gain, if Darth Malgus is the leader, she gains the Sith tag. Just something like that to make sure that she fits within the synergy of Swago. But the other side of this is that there are a lot of Sith from the Old Republic era that are missing from the game. The big one being the actual Sith Emperor, Emperor Vitiate. Again, for my Swago nerds, you guys know who I'm talking about. Emperor Vitiate was the, major Sith at that time. And there are a lot of Sith from that era who we could be adding in. My favorite of those being Lord Scourge from the Revan novel. You could add in Darth Nihilus, Lord Zedrix. There's, again, the list can go on and on for, named Sith that we have not added to this game. I think that would be a great way to release Alina, and then of course releasing, the rest of these Sith to lead into Vitiate, whether he's a marquee unit or, a legendary, we don't know. I think that would be really fun. I think it would be a great, just nice way. The Sith are definitely a faction when you compare, Sith to Jedi, right? When we look at the Jedi faction, it's a massive faction. When you look at Sith, it's significantly smaller, so adding a bunch of Sith here, I think, could just help, one, get that faction to a more similar size of the Jedi, and also just give us another, more options to play around with and have, explore an era that we really haven't touched on much, which is that Old Republic Sith Empire state. So I think that could be really cool. I don't know how likely that is, because again, I do think they really scraped the bottom of the barrel with this last piracy era, with Atano and Quiggled and Kix kind of really feeling like major reaches, especially when we have some iconic characters not in the game from, various media, right? There's still a lot of, Quinlan Vos would be a great example. I'm going to argue that Quinlan Vos is a very iconic character, or Yaddle. Jedi Dooku from Tales of the Jedi. That was a big part of, for a lot of people. He's, very iconic character. General Kalani, the command droid from Clone Wars. Jesse, Cut Up. There's, Top Knot. There's a lot of those clones also not included. Heavy, 99s, Pong Krell, naming characters. You see what I'm going with here. There's a lot more characters that would feel much less like a reach comparative to some of the ones we've gotten. So I don't know if they do that 2 eras in a row. But if we can get serious, I think the answer is Andor. Now, I think this for a couple reasons. And the first of them being, if we go to the screen capture here, this post from Meathead that says, so Rogue One is obviously the best Star Wars movie, and everyone who says otherwise is wrong. Now, you say, well, Phil, that's not Andor content, but when you look at Rogue One, if you just look at the Rogue One faction, we have a lot of the major characters from Rogue One. You have a lot of the major characters from Rogue One. There's a couple of omissions here and there that I could make a case for, but, you've got the major players from Rogue One, and we even have Director Krennic and the Death Trooper. So, we even have TIE Reaper as well. So you have a lot of those characters. Now, a lot of people overlap in the Andor series and Rogue One. Spoiler alerts, right? So, The reason I say Andor so much is because there's a lot of unexplored parts of the Andor series that we really only got Luthen from. You think, just off the top of my head here, one, we could get another version of Cassian, right? I think that would be a great, hey, give us a new Cassian. But you have characters from Ferrix that are missing. Brasso, Bix, Willman. You have characters from the Narkina 5, Prison Break. Now you say, oh, well, Phil, but like that's only 3 episodes. That was the way this was filmed. So you think about the characters on Aldhani, right? The Aldhani heist. That was a 3-episode arc. Now it's a very, very big part of this series, and there's characters that obviously make it through that, heist that, go on later. But you think about it, the character of Nemec. Nemec is a huge character in Andor. Even in that, contained to those 3 episodes, his legacy, perceives on to the finale of Andor. So adding in a character like him doesn't feel like a massive stretch. And again, for perspective, the Night Sister faction, if you've ever noticed this, like old Daka and the, Night Sister Acolyte and Talia and Spirit, like they were in like a single episode of the Clone Wars. Like those specific characters were in like a single episode of Clone Wars. Not saying that they weren't, that's not an iconic episode and it's awesome, but you get what I mean, that they have added in characters who have very small, Quiggle kicks and everybody. But you get the point I'm making. There's a lot of characters from that Narkina 5 arc and the Aldhani arc that had much bigger roles that wouldn't feel out of place in SWGO. I think about characters then if you get into maybe season 2 without spoiling too much. You have characters from Gorman that we could add. You have all the characters that are just kind of recurring throughout. And just kind of think of those recurring characters. You kind of have your Rebel type characters and you have your Empire characters. From the Empire characters, you have Major Partagaz, Dedra Miro, Cyril Karn. You even have that Sergeant Linus Mosk character, Alex Ferns, who is hanging out with Cyril in season 1. He's the other security guard from like Morlana. That's another guy that you could add in. You have Blevin, right? Some of the ISB agents could be added. And I think the way to get around some of the tagging issues with, say, the Empire characters and not making them completely overpowered is to give them an ISB tag. Could be a great way to rework Krennic, give him an ISB tag that makes that team ridiculous. Now, obviously we mentioned a lot of, what about the Rebels? I mean, Vel, Cinta, Nemec, Clea, a younger version of Saw Gerrera, a different version of Mon Mothma. You could have, I'm trying to think. I mean, I've forgotten more characters from that show than I remember. Melshi is a massive omission that I feel like would be a great, place to add him in. Again, Willman, depending on which area you're building him from, there's a couple of those guys. So you could get 2-3 solid eras of Andor content, and it wouldn't feel like a massive stretch. Also think about characters like General Draven, General Merrick, who were, again, in Rogue One and in Andor, and that opens up opportunity for ships as well in some of these cases. So I think there's a strong conversation we can have that by bringing the Andor characters in, which is probably one of the most, if not the most popular Star Wars show, you'd get a great sort of mix of units. I think tagging, again, you're going to have to be careful with this of how you tag, but I think there's a lot of ways that CG has seemed to get around that with either specific callouts within the kits of each other, or you think of like you go to Rebel Fighters and you look at like Sharut and Baze, where they specifically kind of call each other out for certain mechanics. I feel like that's kind of what you'd need to do with any characters from Andor if they're going to have this Rebel tag. Now, again, kind of thinking still with Rogue One, there are, again, Merrick, Draven. Those are 2 characters that you could get from there. But, Melshi. But I'll tell you, a group of characters that has been, again, widely untouched is Saw Gerrera's partisan fighters. So you could add a tag for, like, Rebel Partisan that Saw Gerrera becomes, hey, Rebel Fighter or Rebel Partisan. Like, don't have to change his kit really at all. Just updating language to fit Partisan. That could be a whole nother rabbit hole to go down that I think could really just spice the game up a little bit. And that would lead to being able to have a separate Mon Mothma team, have a Saw Gerrera team, have a team that somehow, Luthen does not have a leadership ability, so obviously he's meant to go with that Mon Mothma or, Saw Gerrera here, but maybe you create a Cassian-type lead that Luthen somehow fits under. Again, I think there's a lot of possibilities that we could go with, and it's just going to depend on what direction Capital Games wants to head with this stuff. And remember, this year, 2026, is the 10-year anniversary of Rogue One. So again, I would not be shocked if we did see more stuff from this series, or from that movie, because it is that 10-year anniversary, and they have been pretty, how would I phrase this? I feel like they have been very cognizant of celebrating those types of anniversaries in Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, and this would obviously be a big one to celebrate. So that's what I could potentially see the next era being. That's the one I'm most convinced about. Let me know what you guys think down below. Like, subscribe, comment. I love you all. May the Force be with you, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, my friends.